dialogue which we were having, which Dr. Singh started. Logistics uncertainty, planning for the future. We went from normal to the next normal, and now we are in the future normal. Disruption is becoming the new normal in logistics services. And as the last panel also said that change is going to be the constant, and from somewhere change will become chaos. So chaos will be the new normal. What we will have, we have a very eminent panel. Suneet Mukherjee, Head of Lubricants at Shell. Can I request Suneet? Please to join us, sir. Ajit John, Head Supply Chain Management, General Mills. Ajit. Vijay Shetty, Vice President, Distribution and Logistics, Alchem. Bhargava Manika, CLO, Dow Chemicals International. Matthew George, General Manager, Petrochemicals, Indian Oil. Shanmukh Singh from the Institute of Supply Chain Management. And Umesh Madhyan, Vice President, Logistics, Hindustan Coca-Cola. Umesh would be the chair of the panel. Welcome, Umesh. The panel is yours.
Good morning. Good morning.
Good morning.
Chai wai to rakha tha ye log ne yaar. Am I audible? Can you guys see me? Oh, sorry, this is offline. हम लोग को तो आदत नहीं है ना. We are already doing all online, right? So this is great fun to have people around us have real faces instead of your pictures on Microsoft Teams or Zoom or whatever. So awesome. Very good, first of all. So welcome to this session. We will be talking about a very interesting topic about uncertainty, which Girish explained. We will touch upon the risks which we try to mitigate in our businesses separately. We have a very expert set of panels, and they belong to different industries. So we have chemical representation, we have cold chain, we have lubricants, Indian oil, and of course, FMCG and beverage. So let us start with the pandemic. What did the pandemic do exactly? Other than our waistlines, it did something else, right? Professionally, I mean, the pandemic also tried to disrupt the business. There are a lot of strategies which got changed. There is a lot of effect on capital. There's a lot of effect on cash. There's a lot of effect on the P&L ratios of large companies, also small companies. So overall, there were many risks which the pandemic posed. And we are now into a separate set of strategy. I still remember 2019, we signed off a strategy and we said that for 5 years, we won't change it. This is our Coke strategy. Let's not change it, 5 years static. But are we doing that? No. The pandemic has completely changed it on the way we look at technology, the way we look at people, and the way we look at demand. And of course, also the aware consumer, right? You see a lot of disruption in the market at your house as well. Gone are the days when there was Amazon or Flipkart who was doing a service at the day which they commit. It is now how fast. It is hyper. So there is Blinkit who gives you a commitment of 8 minutes, but they actually bring it in 6. And they give you a message that we actually did it in 6 minutes, and I don't know how. So there's a lot of that change in consumer expectation as well. So let's start the session with that. What we will try to do is we have two options. We can either talk about more barriers and problems, or we can talk about more solutions. What would you want to hear? This was just a check who is awake and who's sleeping. Okay, obviously solutions, right? So we'll start with problems and try to see if there are solutions as well. So starting with the first one, how did exactly the pandemic impact our individual organizations and how did we come out of it? Let's start with Sunit.
Oh, wow. Morning, everyone. Thanks, Umesh, and great to be in front of all. So every industry, like everyone has suffered, right, in terms of the pandemic. But I would just like to throw some of the important things, See, when in March 2020, when the things surfaced to us, so definitely it was like a bolt from the blue. So at least no one was aware of for the first 10 days what's happening. There were factories being shut, there were people being told not to come, and so on and so forth, a lot of restrictions and all. So those initial 20 days is something like you will never forget in your life, right? But the good part is that every day we all learned after the first 20 days. And that learning for each and every day was exponential. So in terms of management of the factories, in terms of the management of the employees, the people, the district authorities, the government officials, everyone. So every beads of the necklace. So when I am talking about the necklace is not confined to your organization. It's beyond that. Supply management, logistics, warehousing staff, last mile delivery, everything together. But the issue is that we all know and we all grapple through that. But my biggest learning was three things out there. So in terms of the disruption, we always witnessed, at least I felt in that way. Yes, there were disruption right from the time, if you remember, 9th of or 8th of November 2016, when we had demonetization, then we had GST. So some or the other way, the disruption was always there, which we learned how to navigate and how to tide over the crisis. But this was very different. But I would also allude to the fact like a good process. Sometimes we always forget. We talk about, okay, IBP. Yes, IBP can be always fine-tuned in terms of, how to condense the timings of the IBP in terms of your various planning cycles. May not be, each and every cycle can be done for an entire month. You can condense. But I think those processes has definitely helped us to navigate through this crisis. Just imagine a scenario when this processes of IBP and SNOP was not there. How would the organizations run in this particular scenario, right? So I am of the firm opinion that the fundamentals and the basics that whatever we have put in supply chain, that we cannot rule it out. Okay, we can layer it off with technology, we can stack up my artificial intelligence, machine learning, a lot of things we have done which we would not have done before. But in a nutshell, there has been a demand fluctuation, demand variability, the real VUCA, you had seen that. But as you go through the panel discussion, you'll also come out with the kind of things that we have done, both the supply and the demand, and of course the consumer behavior. I'll put that as the first, how it has changed in terms of the various industry, the eating habits, the pent-up demands. Those were the problems, or rather those were the scenarios which evolved, and basis those scenarios, how each and every organization has really acted upon that is the question, right?
Thanks. Wonderful point, Sunit. So what the pandemic actually did, it added a C to the VUCA. The VUCA was already there, and the C was chaos. So now it's complex with chaos. So that is what it is. So let's move on to the next perspective on the pandemic, which is from someone who fuels all of us, Mr. Matthew from Indian Oil.
Well, I've been in the oil industry for 35 years, and I've never seen anything like that. I mean, I don't know how much you're familiar with running a refinery, but supposing the diesel demand falls out of the bottom, then it's impossible to run a refinery. You've got to close it down, essentially. But we had a contradictory factor. We also make petrochemicals. And then we saw sudden spike in demand for certain petrochemicals, those related to personal protective equipment, the masks that you make, polypropylene, hygienic, that is the detergent intermediate, LAB that we make. Those had huge demand. Those had spiked by about anywhere between 25 to 40% over the normal. So you had a dichotomy here. On the one hand, your refinery shut down, there's no feedstock. On the other hand, you got a solid pull for one particular type of product out of the probably 50, 60, 70 that you make. So very, very trying time, And to top it all, we had huge crude inventories coming in at that moment. The refineries were shut down, and then we discovered a new bad word beginning with D in the company called demurrage, right? So a lot of things happened so suddenly. But the good side of it is, we discovered that pipelines can be used for storage more effectively. We discovered that tanks can be hired for storage. We discovered that warehousing was the thing of the future because warehouses are where the unwanted products were kept temporarily during that particular period. So very, very exciting times, for want of a better word, although I guess that, no, I lost my hair before the pandemic, so I don't complain about that, but there are many people in the company, including our chairman, who's become very gray all of a sudden. So yes, it was a tough time, but what it taught me personally, one soundbite, the supply chain is not a chain. It's at best a thin silk thread which is easily broken. I think it does us well to remember that point. Thanks.
Super scary. And thank you for that good reason for us for our hair turning gray. So I think from an FMCG perspective, it is also important for us to understand that there was a habit change from the consumer. People who were at about, let's say, 8 to 10% of modern trade versus 90+% of general trade, this is increasing big time. It is expected to double by 2024, 2025, depending on what product it is, but it is rapidly increasing. E-commerce, we all know, is about, I don't know, abhi 300, 400% to dekhna chhod diya humne. It's normally how much X it is going, right? 3X, 4X. So, and all of this is higher cost to serve. All of this is higher on complexity for supply chain for all of us, which means all of this solutioning on warehousing, on last mile delivery, on distribution, trucking, all that needs more and more shaking and needs a proper strategy for you to land there, where you will have all of these complexities of serving the new consumer post-pandemic. So that's more from an FMCG standpoint. Moving on, let's talk about imports a little bit. How exactly is imports and containers, and we keep on seeing these pictures from Shanghai, right? There are so many containers standing outside that you're not expecting any shipments in the time committed to you by the vendors. So let's understand, where is that landing? What is the magnanimity of that problem? And if there are any solutions or any hope for them to get corrected. Sunit, we start with you.
Yeah, so I think, in the first panel discussion as well, and Dr. Rakesh touched upon this point, if I see the entire structure, the way it has been built, this import has been a massive, massive problem, in fact, in terms of the astronomical cost which is spiraled up, and in terms of the availability of the containers. So basically and fundamentally, if someone looks into that, is that what has happened, what has gone wrong? So logic says that maybe because of, when you had this COVID, definitely no one knew about the demand. So there might have been an issue wherein people thought of, is a demand and supply kind of a gap. So that many containers might not be available in the system, right? So the issue out here is that your own organization, how it is structured. For example, if I have to talk about, if my import contribution is 30%, right? Or for example, more than 50%. Just imagine the scenario. Like today in the morning, we heard from you from Sketches as well, like 100% is imported. I was just wondering how the supply chain was getting managed that time. That is totally about whatever inventory you have and you have to just sell. It's manufacturing to sales strategy, whatever is available. Rather available to sales strategy. But scenarios changes out there, and the kind of a jamming, the kind of a demurrage, the kind of a detention which happened, and there's no predictability at all. And still today we are grappling the same thing, in fact, right? The cost is spiraling up, it's hitting the bottom line. So now this is the problem actually. So what is the solution? So we all know like this has happened and this is going to happen. It's not going to stop here. I think the most important point out here will be the spirit of localization. So unless and until we have a very concerted and a very convergent strategy of localization, this problem is not going to die down for the next 5 years at least, because disruption will be there will be changes of scenario. So it all depends on how agile we are to understand this. It will take time in terms of capital investment and others, but the strategy on a long-term basis should be more and more of localization. And that is the only panacea that I can look into, because we have been talking to various industry circles, we have been talking to various scenarios as well. No concrete solution comes actually into this, right? Because no one knows that this problem is going to end by such and such date. It's not going to end, it's going to be there. There is a new norm. So if I don't try to, finally gravitate towards a kind of a center core strategy of localization. So this problem is going to hit the bottom line. The costs will be totally under, out of whack, and it will be very difficult to predict the bottom line as well if your contribution of import is more than 20-30%. Now, if you're at 5-6%, your strategy differs, but overall, I think that will be a biggest problem that we're grappling with.
Perfect. So the Coke model works, right? With 95% local, you produce there in that state. Of course, we do have little imports, and we do have OEM imports, machinery imports, spare part imports, which is definitely a problem, a bigger problem which we have. But nothing beats localization as a solution. Let's hear from Vijay on this perspective.
Yeah, import cost, everyone knows, okay? There was a time where if we had to import or versus localization, okay? One of the things why China had one of the benefit was, of course, they had the bulk manufacturing capacities available with them, because of which the unit cost used to be quite competitive compared to, let's say, any India market, okay? But today they don't have that upper hand, okay? One of the reasons is the freight rates. Your freight rates from China to India earlier was somewhere around $1,000, okay? But today, if you have to call any material from China, you have to pay actually 10 times of that. And imagine if it has to come from Europe and even US, it has multiplied. So domestic players who have felt that, okay, they can't beat the Chinese competition have now realized, thanks to the shipping company, they have also tasted something which they've never, ever, I would say, experienced in the past, okay? Their EBITDA margins definitely have been the greatest in the time. They have never achieved that kind of a levels. And this demand and supply gap in the containerization definitely is going to continue, okay? Now, how do we actually make sure we have a less impact? In our organization, what we did from an import and export point of view, okay, because we also are have a sizable exports out of the country to different markets. So what we did was to first talk to the shipping companies, okay? We had forwarders, many forwarders and the shipping lines whom we collaborated to make sure that at least containers are available, okay? And many a times it so happened like as Sunit talked about, the supplier is ready to with the material, but he's not getting those containers to actually ship them to India. So these were all of the challenges, and the best way to deal with it is play a long-term strategy. In the next 1 year, nothing is going to change, is what we know, okay, and with this Ukraine-Russia war, things are going to further escalate. So as a long-term strategy in our organization, what we have done is to on all the important sectors, we have a long-term contract that gives us stability in terms of, okay, what is that best cost that we are going to incur? And more shift of imports have now become to from the domestic suppliers. So I think that's the benefit. Of course, from a farm, when I talk about pharma, Government of India is also now pitched in a lot of incentives to make sure that the APIs are manufactured in India. Of course, those initiatives were announced. It will take another 5 years to a decade's time to actually stabilize that, but it's a good start, I would say. So that's the change what we see in the current situation as of now.
Perfect. The best solution still is stop the war. I hope somebody listens and stops the war. So we've spoken about uncertainty in demand. We've spoken about supply from an import angle. Let's talk about what exactly is the current challenge for every logisticians. My team is also still out there. What is the biggest challenge we still have in running our domestic transportation, which is fuel, right? Fuel, the commodity, we just don't know where is it going. We started this year with assuming we might save versus 2021, but it again started soaring in April. What are the alternatives? Is there any alternative? Is it ready enough? How ready is India? None other than Mr. Matthew, who takes us through his expert advice from Indian Oil.
I mean, let's first address the elephant in the room, the oil prices. If people knew where oil prices were going, people would have made money out of it. Frankly, nobody can really guess although there is a certain level of stability now, but unless and until the GST regime is extended to include fuels and the states agree, for some taxation sharing arrangement, we are slightly doubtful about the way the fuel prices will go on. I mean, there's going to be a significant challenge in that aspect. But more importantly than that, I want to talk about what is coming in the future. There are a lot of governmental panels going on. We attend one every 2 days. And there are significant changes envisaged in connection with the net zero target, which we have committed by 2070. Obviously, look at the Indian transportation industry. 60-odd%, almost 65% is road-based. Now, when you say road-based, not essentially the most economical road-based, in the sense that even now there are medium and smaller trucks running. It's not only the big trucks. Big trucks are few and far in between. Containerization levels for domestic freights are very small. The hub and spoke arrangements are very little. The railways, frankly, for want of a better word and the risk of being challenged, they are not playing their part yet, although there's a lot of investment, a lot of push in that regard. So there are several things that is wrong with the country. We talk about manufacturing. We all talk about manufacturing. In a logistics performance index, I think we are number 44 in the world. Not a very happy place to be in. Our logistics costs are 14% of our GDP, there or thereabouts. Our freight cost is at approximately 1.9 rupee per ton kilometer, which is double that of what is there in the US. So we have a lot of things that are wrong, which can only be addressed by certain steps, which thankfully are being taken. The dedicated freight corridor, extensive network of new roadways. For example, the Delhi-Mumbai Expressway, which I believe is going to be a game changer in the way logistics performs in the country. Because once you taste that, you're going to go ahead, and even the states are going to push, other metros are going to come in, and these kind of roads are going to come in. Already in Maharashtra, you're seeing several, including the Mumbai-Nagpur Expressway. So these are all designed to save on that. But the significant problem is, what about fuel? How long is this diesel going to go on? The answer is, as of now, studies reveal that you cannot maintain this diesel transportation beyond 2040. So what is the answer? The answer is, you have hydrogen, you have fuel cell electric vehicle, and you have a battery electric vehicle. These are your answers. Now, but when you make an electric vehicle, if you produce power in a dirty manner, let's say from coal, it doesn't really help the overall thing. So if you really look at something very interesting, Toyota, and when I say Toyota, by extension Maruti, okay, because they are collaborating, and Honda, who are known to be conservative players in the industry, have gone the route of the hybrid electric vehicle. If you see, Honda has launched a new hybrid in the mainstream segment. Toyota is going to follow, and Maruti is also going to follow. So they probably feel that you first improve efficiency. And why? What is the critical factor which enables electric vehicles? It's the efficiency. When you run a gasoline or a diesel vehicle, the efficiency is 35 to 40% from the energy you put in to the energy which comes out. In an electric vehicle, that becomes between 85 and 90%. So what they're trying to do, they're trying to take a modal mix of both and arrive at an efficiency of about 60-65% by way of hybrid. So then charging infrastructure is not a problem. You can straight away go to hybrid. Will the government finance that? That's a question I have. It's a question we continue to raise. For example, in the USA, you buy a plug-in hybrid vehicle, you get a tax rebate, a straight away tax rebate. You buy a BMW X5, $7,500 off your taxes. So are we thinking of something like that? The very fact that Maruti has gone this route, it gives a critical mass to the entire concept, and I'm sure the truck manufacturers will follow. Containerization is a prerequisite to think, and as a company, what we are looking at is we are going to change our retail outlets, that is petrol pumps, on the main highways into large logistics parks. One of the things we want to enable is tractor-trailer operation on long-distance thing, whereby a container comes with a tractor-trailer. It changes the tractor-trailer at that particular place, let's say Nagpur, and then goes on down south. That can enable electrification in a better way. Those big trailers which are electric can go about 400 kilometers without a charge, so you swap the truck over and move it ahead. So a lot of changes are on the horizon, and these changes are a must. You have no other place to go. It's like an emergency exit. You have to take that. So this is where we are, and as a company, to follow the Kodak example, as a company whose business is under threat, let's face it, our main business is diesel. Now, if we lose diesel, we got to think of something else, and that is exactly what we are doing at this moment. We don't see a way around this. Initially, efficiency improvement by way of hybridization will come, then electrification will come, and if hydrogen is successful, nothing like it, it'll be a far more, not safer, but a cheaper and a more long-term solution to the entire issue. That's where we are. So significant changes are on the anvil.
Brilliant statistics, sir, but one selfish, mean question. Is the diesel price going to increase more this year?
It depends. The war is in what, 74th day? It all depends on what's happening there and what kind of sanctions come. Now we are again looking to buy the Urals crude, which is the Russian crude. Now provided we don't get any sanction and provided the government admits to getting Russian crude at discounted prices, they should be reducing the diesel price. But what is happening is we look at the crude price at Brent at $100 or whatever, and then we take the Russian crude in at $70, then we say that's a very small component, so it doesn't make any difference to the country, so the price remains where it is. So this is where we are, but diesel is not a very safe or stable option going forward.
Thank you, perfect. So from an alternative perspective, we are working on biodiesel. We have about 300 trucks right now down in South, where biodiesel is being tested for now 2 seasons, broadly more than a year. Surprisingly, when we thought that we will upscale this to other states and other markets, Raghuveer, you're smiling, we thought we will not get vendors. And then when we got our procurement on the job and did some research, we found there are 27 vendors, all spread across different states. So biodiesel, biofuel is not that impossible. We can still get it, and we should still continue trying and have a target. So we have a very definitive target till 2025. A decent composition should go to at least biofuel. Point number 2, on EVs, I would have loved if the automobile sector would not have that much impacted due to pandemic. Unfortunately, it was the topmost. So all the research work, etc., which was committed to us by companies like Daimler and more, is not happening. So right now, happening, but very slow. So we are working with a local OEM who will try and modify a trailer into EV. About 160 kilometers is the commitment. They have an order from Tata in Jamshedpur for about 100 trucks, running for now more than a year, and seems promising. So we are about to see if we can engage in that and try that. So soon, in a couple of months, we'll have that on our roads and see how it works, and then take it from there. So that's about alternatives of fuel, but one important part of the strategy, talking of logistics strategy going forward, is also multimodal. So how do we move to train? There is a commitment of sea. Once upon a time, we heard from Mr. Prabhu that time that we will have 7 seaports domestic in India. There will be a lot of investments. There will be a lot of replacement of road to sea. Still slow, not that great. Rail also was committed good enough. It's not down in terms of rates, but I think it is phenomenally better in terms of service, in terms of quality of goods, in terms of support they can give you at the yard. For example, we tried Hydra in one of the rail yards for loading because we wanted to do palletized, so that we gain on delivered package quality, and we also gain on efficiency of loading time and unloading time. So that support is definitely there. So multimodal is also a significant part of the strategy. Let's hear from Manika on how do they use it right now, how can it grow, and how can it also be, more importantly, safer.
Thanks, Umesh. So multimodal, I'll refrain from commenting on coastal. We don't do seaways yet. But rail, definitely, there's a lot of traction and interest. Of course, because rail transportation mode ticks all the boxes from a long-term strategy perspective, whether it's safety, sustainability in terms of your carbon emission reduction, and of course, cost. With respect to capacity, even though, like Umesh mentioned, and Mr. Matthew also mentioned that especially with a public-private partnership that's been encouraged by the government, we see an infusion of capacity compared to a few years ago where, it was just limited to commodity movements. So private players like us, we couldn't even raise hand and say, okay, I need to move this product by rail. So I think it's better, but it's nowhere close to the pace that we need, that capacity. But the interesting thing to note here, and I'll touch on the problem and solution both, is in India compared to US and Europe, when we say rail, actually it's not just rail, it's always a road leg, almost always a road leg, followed by a rail leg, followed by another road leg. Which means that even though I would like to believe that end-to-end it's a much more safer and efficient mode of transportation, ground reality may not reflect that. And the obvious reason is the multiple handovers. And for the chemical industry, as soon as I know that, okay, multiple people are going to come and touch the cargo, the preparedness needed with respect to, for example, emergency response. I think the whole control system that we need, the whole ecosystem that we need around that goes multifold just because it's a broken chain. It's not end-to-end rail. And I think this, even though there is emergence of 3PL players, it's still an opportunity to tap by players who can come in and either give the end-to-end solution themselves to the industry or gain that non-negotiable expertise in managing their rail and road subcontractors respectively for this end-to-end chain. The third opportunity over there would be digitalization, because even though we would like to believe that tracking-wise and visibility-wise we are doing better as an industry right now, again this broken chain leads to more uncertainty in transit time. So for businesses where the delivery transit times that are needed are more sensitive, even if you have the capacity, you would prefer not to move those goods by rail because you have a commitment to meet to the customer and then you will prefer the road mode. Apart from that, Umesh touched upon safety. I think the multimodal safety aspect I kind of covered in what I just said. But I want to talk about safety because of all the industries. When we talk about logistics uncertainty, chemical industry is where the safety needs to be like at the ultimate most pinnacle of your priorities. And I want to quickly, take an example of the pandemic when the first nationwide lockdown happened in March 2020 and hundreds of vehicles, rather thousands of vehicles were stuck at toll nakas or at different junctions at state borders or, what have you, for weeks. I think cost, demurrage, of course, that was an impact for us too. But the first thing we did within 48 hours of realizing what has happened is go back to the book quickly and outline, okay, what if a spillage happens somewhere on the road? What will be our emergency response plan if that happens? Where is the nearest fire station? Where is the nearest team? Where is the nearest manufacturing plant? It can be anybody else in the industry, but who could we contact if something goes wrong? Same way with pilferage. So if the driver leaves the vehicle there and goes away and the local people over there try to steal the product, it's not just product lost or cost loss. It's also what if that product is toxic? How do we ensure more security around that? And I think with this in mind, and I'll take one more minute just to mention, hopefully, in the chemical industry, we have come up with an ecosystem called Nicer Globe. It's under the umbrella of Indian Chemical Council and 7 founding members, Dow, BSF, Lances, Alkyl Amines, Covestro, we all came together and founded that. So it's an ecosystem of digital tracking of vehicles, digital checks of all the vehicles and their capability of handling the chemicals that they are carrying. But more importantly, recently we also inaugurated a 24/7 emergency response ecosystem pan-India. So right now we have it on west to north route and west to south route, but we are hopefully going to expand to more routes. And I think, and of course we started as 7, but now 70 members have joined that ecosystem from within the chemical industry. And since we have industry representation from different areas here, I would urge other industries also to think in this direction because we don't have to fight this uncertainty battle alone. There's a lot that we can do by collaborating. And I don't think the way we did it in chemical industry, any of the competition related or any of our competitive advantage got lost in the process. So that's the last message I would like to leave with respect to safety. Thank you.
Can I just add a few points?
Yes.
According to me, multimodal allows us to diversify our logistics strategy, and diversification wherever possible is important to mitigate risks. Why? Because disruptions are here to stay, and so is complexity. Actually, in fact, disruptions, the incidence rate of disruptions is increasing today. What do I mean by that? Your next disruption will be faster than the previous one, and it will take you down faster. So diversification, may it be your logistics, your procurement, your distribution, it's becoming more and more important today. And multimodal does not only add one more option, it allows you to, it opens up your transport capabilities to anything. You can transport on a donkey tomorrow because you're multimodal. So yeah, saying that uncertainty is the only certain thing in supply chain. So logistics needs to be right there when your product is available. Logistics need not increase the lead time of the whole supply chain. It should, in my opinion, just help us reduce lead times, get there as fast as possible. So logistics diversification is important. Touching upon localization, I don't think localization leads to diversification. What if your local area is shut down tomorrow? What do you do? That's
Perfect.
Umesh.
Anyone else?
Yeah,
Please.
This is very close to my heart about the railway transportation multimodal. Way back in 2000, when I started my career, I was in Britannia. And the mandate was given to me because I met the railway officials then. So I was posted in Kolkata. So Kolkata to Guwahati was the toughest, the most arduous route actually, right? Very difficult route. And you won't believe that we cracked the railway movement from Calcutta to Guwahati at a 20% freight savings that time. The story is that we learned a lot from that in terms of your damage, spillage and everything, right? And it was all created by, some team led by me. And from there, today when we talk about the railway transportation multimodal, so there are companies wherein, right from the factory there is a railway track and it goes to the container yard and finally it moves to the various places of the country. I think the pace had to go right from 2000 till date. That pace, it has not been there. And it's a kind of a shock to me as well, because way back in 2000, if it was in that state, in an obscure place that time in Guwahati, right? If it could have happened there that time, then why this country currently 20 years hence from that time, we have not gone to that extent. So this is a point which I am pondering as well. And glad to tell that, okay, some corridors has been there as well. But I think with sustainability and in terms of taking care of uncertainty part as well, I think this is the best thing that we should all do. And this is going to help us in a very big way. And I'm very sure of that. Maybe, we're not tapping the right place. And that's why we are having this kind of a fragile mechanism of this. But I think it can go in a big way. Thank you.
Vijay.
Yeah, I would say multimodal logistics capability, I would say in India it is yet to be tested. Okay, it has enormous opportunity. Thank God that we have a stable government now. Okay, and last year the government of India announced some 35 integrated multi-logistics parks coming up all across the country. And I wish and pray that this dream or the plan gets executed well so that the opportunity that it has for every organization, every industry, which is something to do with carbon footprint. Sustainability is the biggest opportunity with the multimodal transportation. The second topic is on the safety parameters, okay? And definitely the third parameter is cost. Your cost also will definitely go down. While I was in BSF, we used one route for rail and road movement, and it worked really effectively. Okay, from Mangalore to Collard, we had a truck getting into the train, and all the way it would come to Collard and get those deliveries done. And when I look at the logistics cost, it was, yeah, to the tune of almost 25% savings. Of course, as Sunit and others mentioned, yes, I would say, as a country, I would say the government of India needs to focus on the plan to implement more and more logistics parks, and that's the area where I clearly see that if we focus on, I'm sure we will be in the top 5 in the global arena when it comes to the logistics cost for the organizations. Yeah.
Thank you, Vijay. Perfect. So, moving on from multimodal, let's get on to the favorite topic, my favorite topic, which is technology. When we talk of logistics strategy, I think technology is something which we cannot run away from. So, what are those kind of technologies which A, helped organizations survive the pandemic to some extent, and how has been the digital roadmap changing pre and post pandemic? So starting with what helped. So I share the story a lot. We did this wonderful automated warehouse in west of India in Gujarat. And ideally this warehouse would have been run, it's a large distribution center. It does about more than 400 pallets per hour. So it needs about 350 to 400 people to run the whole warehouse. And we made it automated, which is why we need only 50 people to run it. And that's the kind of automation which gets into it, and it still consistently does 400 pallets per hour. And that is something which came as a savior because you did not impact on your throughput. There was a lot of issue on getting people during the pandemic and trying to make sure that you do the orders which you get. Like I said, there was a huge shift from a general trade to modern trade, so the modern trade orders were actually growing. So you need more and more people for the higher cost to serve, for the higher complexity of loading, etc. So that is one automation which definitely helped, and people were challenging that before. When we were doing this, I was discussing with Sunit on how many people challenged the investment on an ASRS because it will not pay back, but it actually did pay back. And it's still decent for us to manufacture ASRSs in India and do it. We had an auto-loading dock which loads 1,000 cases in less than 3 minutes manlessly. We have yard management systems, we have transport management systems. So a lot of digitization. We had digital signatures which helped a lot because then it avoids contact, because then there is digital signature already in your invoice. So those kind of investments and solutions definitely helped. Now what's happening post-pandemic? Going paperless was not that key because there are many such other investments which give you larger payback on people, on processes, on cost or service. So this was, I would say, number 9 or number 10. But right now, number 1 is going paperless. How do we go paperless more? How do we digitize a lot of stuff? That is number 1 trend right now when we talk digital. In terms of tech, how you apply them, RPA, which is robotic process automation, is something which is again gaining more traction than others, relatively. And people get stuck sometimes to implement RPA because they think of implementing a start-to-end solution, which is not so easy in ops and in our business. You can also automate a part of it and let the other part still continue manual. So those are a kind of things which is normally what we are looking at. So our strategy right now is RPA and hyperbots, which will work with AI cameras and so on and try and make system more automatic both in digital manufacturing and warehousing and transport to the extent of track and trace as well. So that's broadly solutions on tech. We are also working on an IoT based solution for long now for having our yard management system, because there are plants which handle about 300 to 400 trucks in a day and it becomes too complex for ensuring a better lead time. So talking of technology and solutions, the biggest barrier to technology and solutions is also the payback. And to talk about it, let's hear from Ajit, his perspective on how are few solutions which end barriers on technology.
So Umesh, I think you've nailed the problem on the head. Every CXO worth their salt is asking the question, iska mujhe kya milega? Right? And I think that's typically been one of the Achilles heels in an industry, or most industries where you always are looking from an investment first, or you are looking at a returns perspective. And often what we miss is that the possibilities it unlocks technology. Like, for example, one of the things that we realized during the pandemic is I said, orchestration is happening at multiple places. In a food short shelf life product industry, we would like to have orchestrated closer to consumers or customer patches. But when you're orchestrating at say 20 locations, it's not easy to track. And suddenly you realize, hey, if I had an order management system, so much more easier to track it than people sending in MIS and figuring out this didn't happen, that didn't happen, right? And I think the real question is often we miss is the potential of technology to be a multiplier. If you look at a TMS or you look at an OMS or any of the WMSs, the entire ability for you to also kind of downscale. One of the challenges in logistics industry is you are never going to always get a lot of people that you want. You'll have to make do with who you have. But which means the fundamental of people, process, technology. If industries have had or companies that have had very strong processes, like I know Amit and Asian Paints, and I've admired them from a distance, from a long time, where processes have been very strong, underpinned by good people, over time that's been easy to scale to technology. But anybody who said leapfrog by saying, today I was not digital, but I will become digital suddenly, that's where the challenge starts. You realize data is not there, people don't understand. And the best part of supply chain is when you go down the supply chain, what we do on an Excel sheet looks nice to us. Sometimes we fall in love with our own ideas, right? But the question that we often have to answer is, what's in it for many other people down the chain? That fundamental question of what's in it for me? And to generate that buy-in across levels of supply chain with different partners, not an easy task. I mean, easier said than done. If they would all say, hey, we like your idea and we will do it and we'll put that effort for you, easier. But often that thing that moves that is often money. And that is something that you are always looking at saving. So hence the question of how do you share it, right? So a big part of digitalization or technology adoption has been the question. And for example, we once tried, when I was in Diageo, we tried to implement a robotic cobot-based solution for repacking bottles or labeling bottles. The first thing that the Mathad union there did is figure out that we're going to do it and issued a threat to our warehouse packer by saying, if you get that, we will give you zero labor. Right? It's either 1 or 0. And we never intended to kind of shut down people being there. We said we're going to add this to augment capacity. But that just missed the point. So we tested, tried, we did all the videos, we did simulation, and finally people say, hey, tu laega na, to main band kar dunga kaam. Sometimes some of these are, and I don't know what does it sometimes take to, get that what's in it for me for a lot of people very strongly on. And I suspect some part of it is also trust, because if IR is very strong, then people get it by saying, hey, industry wants to do better, and we will negotiate a better agreement that allows us to do better and earn better. Fantastic. So when you tell for example, my favorite best is the BST in Bombay. And if all of you who have lived in Bombay, you have seen that big box of tickets, right? Where they punch it out and give it to you. But if you see the way they've orchestrated going from that ticket box to a digital keypad is amazing. And I can only admire them from this. Because they were so used to that. I mean, all through my childhood when I went to school, the conductor's favorite activity was clipping the ticket and giving it to you. And today he's not doing it, right? And he's adopted the new technology. And that is also in a completely blue-collar workforce. Right? So I think sometimes a question of what's in it for me, and that, of course, our CEOs will ask us, but the question of how do you articulate down for people below, why should they do it, adopt it, and then do they have the right skill sets and mindset? Because when you do technology, you can't say, it failed, and oh my God, what do I do? You evolve. Right? And I think these are some of the classical challenges that you will face. And if you never had a stable process, all the best in trying digital, right? Then you'll really wish yourself out, So, and you'll wonder why did we do it in the first place, right? So some of these are things that you have to ponder when you say, hey, I'm going to digitalize or I'm going to adopt technology. What am I doing it for? And do everybody understand the benefit? And if that everybody doesn't include even blue-collar workforce, we're going to have a challenge. They're often the people who are doing the execution last mile, right? And what is the education level? Do they appreciate technology? And sometimes we often romanticize it by saying, hey, they can operate a smartphone, they can operate anything. And guess what? They don't operate your software. And it's not as attractive as a smartphone, by the way. Not as well built as the apps that you have on smartphones. So That's our reality today.
Thank you. I can't say how much we all can resonate with this. About the IR problem, I will obviously not add anything in the interest of IR and people and automation. So I think these are all the barriers which we have on technology. I think a couple of tips. Number one, try and look at the payback more holistic end to end. For example, the payback for palletizing transportation is also customer satisfaction and quality. It is also faster route to market. It's also speed of execution. It's also throughput which you get more versus what you do now. Yes, there is a loss of the weight of the pallet. Yes, you cannot ever in your life match cases loading in terms of cube utilization versus pallets, obviously. But then are all of these other benefits important? I think our experiences, they are. We were at about 20% palletized transportation a decade back, and today we are 91 almost. So we almost do not touch a bottle which reaches the shelf in a modern trade. There are about 6 sites right now which are touchless for us, and that's how they are configured. But having said that, all of these are barriers, but the largest barrier obviously is people. Because we still have the same workforce who has been working for the last decade and more, and it is not easy to embrace technology, just like it is not easy to embrace startups, and there is still a lot of problem on catching up on the capability of people with the pace technology is coming in. In 2013, when I joined HCCB, we had 67 warehouses, we had about 29 plants, we had manual transportation, about 2% of it was palletized. Today we have 90-91% palletization. We have manless loading. We have transport management system where the transporter accepts an order. We do billing automatically there. We pay him in 7 days so that we ensure that the market is good for us. We give the driver a trip insurance. We have an e-learning module for the driver, which is very, very digital, and he gets certified before he gets loading so that we know that he's safe on the road. So there are a lot many other practices, and it is evolving big time. Now, are people trained to do that? There is still a lot of gap. There is still a lot of gap in filling capability of people, training them and getting them to the level we want to. We did the first ASRS, like I said, I think in 2018 we went live. We have done 2 after that already. We are negotiating 3 more this year. We will issue orders within 2-3 months. And we will have about 6 ASRSs by next year. So at that pace, are people ready? Definitely not. That's the biggest hole right now, that you will continue to invest on tech. You have to, in parallel, continue to invest on people as well. With that, let's understand the perspective on this from Manika.
Thanks. No, I agree with you. And people, I mean, we can talk about vehicles and containers and EVs and fuels, but people are the heart and soul of the logistics industry. And that's why there are people here in the room, right? Not vehicles. So, but I truly, truly believe that talent management as a real strategic pillar does not have the right focus in the logistics industry overall. And at the risk of generalizing, I do want to share a recent example. So I'm currently hiring in the logistics team for Dow. And for some of the roles, I was hoping to get some freshers from some of the B schools, and I was trying to post on the alumni groups, and I didn't get enough hits at all. And incidentally, my kid brother, he's just gotten into the supply chain industry, fresh from MBA, and he and his friends came home, and I was, joking around, and I said, "Why are you guys not applying? I've sent that link. Somebody apply." And they said that, we want to make a career in supply chain, but we would prefer procurement and planning over logistics, so we are not coming to you. Now, even though they were joking and pulling my leg at that time, I think there is some truth to that. So when we say supply chain as an industry, and we look at where is the pipeline of talent coming in from, at a granular level, almost from nowhere. So we do need to do a lot of work on that front, attracting the right talent, creating that pipeline. And I agree with Umesh around the skill set building, because I think whatever we have learned as an industry, our teams, we ourselves, it's been based on what got thrown at us. So GST happened, consolidation of industry happened, digitalization is happening, pandemic happened, and we evolved as per the need. But it has been a pull and not really a push. So I don't think we are actively going to the blackboard and looking at, okay, these are the skill sets that I have in my team. 5 years later, is this going to suffice? So most generically, if I have to put the skill set out there, operations management, vendor management. If my team knows this, you know, they are the right team, or let me hire people who can do operation management, vendor management. But we are not even thinking about how with the recent pandemic, for example, change management, project management, data analytics, you know, getting those insights from the huge repositories of data that we are creating everywhere. I think we are not doing enough to make sure that that skill set is in the pipeline, and it should reflect in hiring, as well as making our current teams and the current workforce relevant so that they are not out of jobs 5 or 10 years down the line. So I think, yeah, a lot to be done there, and I see I think the time is up or something? Yes. Okay.
Yes, not for you, our all time is up. So, with that, I think, just to summarize on the people part, that yes, there is a problem right now. So Forbes did a study just before the pandemic, where out of the 10 required skills for logistics, number 9 used to be creativity. There was a number 9 way back in 2000s, that point in time. What changed just before the pandemic when Forbes issued this was being creative was the number 1 requirement of skill set for a logistician. Because there are so much of technology solutions available to logistics problems that all you need to do is be creative. Nobody thought an IoT solution will be used for yard management and to trace whether the truck is still standing or already loaded and gone. But that's how you got to be creative and use those solutions and make sure that your logistics is optimized. So with that, that is it from all of us. We would love to have questions. Yes, sir, please. You can have this.
Yeah, hi. That was a great discussion. I'm really happy to learn so many new things. I work in the UAE and GCC market. So one quick question is that, you know, Mr. Matthews spoke about the high cost of logistics, which is 13, 14%, very high. And there are a lot of inefficiencies in the trucking system. And a lot of trucks in the short haul as well as long haul, you know, they are doing empty trips. So is there somebody working on to create a visibility of vehicles across trucks so that they get return loads in time, they get loaded in time, they're not dependent on brokers, some kind of freight exchange, or I don't know what new things are happening. If
so I can just quickly
anybody can answer this.
Yeah. So I think today one part of the heartening part of startups is also a lot of startups are trying to aggregate inefficiencies out. Yes. For example, if you look at services like Porter, etc., they are actually fractal selling out very small capacities, and they are aggregating upsized. So today that exists. Then a lot of companies are trying to collaborate on portals, on transportation management portals. Like for example, Pando allows you to orchestrate, you know, cross-loading, joint loading, return trips, etc. So that's still in fragments, to be honest. But a lot of startup platforms are aiming to do that today. And now if you see one of the interesting platforms that's also coming up, slightly different, is the ONDC, where you are trying to say that we are going to replicate the e-commerce ecosystem for everybody to partner, right? And I'm sure the day that plugs in really well, all aggregators who are on there, capacity will become visible in some manner. And if people are thinking of it as a solution. Today it's a seller ecosystem. Tomorrow what will be sold probably is going to be space, capacity, time share.
Girish, Pando's investment is paid off. Just got paid off. So, yeah. So yes, we are also working with CII. And this is more government-led. Manika is also a part of it. So there are different streams. What happened was way back before the pandemic with the logistics minister Pawan Agarwal, we had a small meeting on the issues, and he had given us 4 pillars on which they were working. One of them was digital freight exchange, on which there is a group from CII, which is working on it for the last close to a year now. So happy to have more members on it. You can contact me or Manika and we can add. Can we have the next one? Yes, Anup.
It's been great interacting session and very enlightening. Thanks to all of you. Just some of the points which I just captured, right? And these are really burning issues right now. People is one, right? People don't want to come to logistics, but they want to be on data analytics and demand and supply. We talk about investment on IT. Around that, I think there is a lot of requirement from thinking from I to we. So what I'm saying is collaboration. So how you, as the leaders, looking at collaborating with the logistics service providers while we're talking about multimodal expansions, PFTs coming everywhere, maybe Northeast, we discuss, how we can touch the Northeast better in the reach. So what is your thoughts about, collaborations and involving the service providers also as a partner into your supply chain?
So let me, yeah. Okay, fine. So
Into your lunchtime.
okay, 30 seconds. So see, this collaboration thing is happening since the last 15 years, right? But now technology being there, it has got further pronounced and, much more towards the positive side. The places wherein we struggle is basically is that, it takes a steam, but when you go for the scale up, it collapses.
Correct.
But right now, with various platforms in place, and this is the need and the necessity which, as an industry leaders, be it horizontal or vertical collaboration both. There's some solid examples which we have seen in the last 5-6 years as well. Like as you go to in the first session, we talked about the rural market, how to tap in. Is it feasible for any kind of a company to just do it single-handedly? It's not possible. If you have to go to the hinterlands of the country, you have to collaborate with the various companies, basis your contracts and whatever you are having, and then you can move. Perfect. Similarly for the 3PL partners as well. Supplier, plus my 3PL, it's all a big and large team. I cannot work in isolation, is very clear post this pandemic. So there has to be collaboration.
Correct. So 3PL can also collaborate. So, so we all are here for lunch. So you can get in touch with us either on LinkedIn, or we can have a discussion here on lunch. Since lunch ka dhamki already de diya hai sir ne, so we'll end it here.